Welcome. Happy Saturday, my friends, and welcome back into another edition of Prime Sports World. On today's episode of Prime, we're going to be talking about the NBA. We're going to be talking about the 2023-2024 Pacific Division preview. That, of course, includes the Sacramento Kings, Matt James' Phoenix Suns, Los Angeles Lakers, Clippers, and the Golden State Warriors. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. My name is your host. I'm David Huffman. Right there, my co-host for today, Mr. Matthew James. Excited about his Diamondbacks and excited about his Phoenix Suns. Things are winding in the NBA and Major League Baseball, and the basketball season is just about to get fired up. A lot of changes on these rosters of all five of these teams, really. But yeah, let us know down in the comment section if you're a fan of one of these five basketball teams. And without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about the Sacramento Kings. Shocking winner of this division last year. Was the what were they, number 3 seed in the Western Conference when it was all said and done. Took the Golden State Warriors to 7 games last year. Basically gave them all they could handle in that series. They were the 3 seed. Their main roster is all kind of coming back, right? De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis. I'm looking at their roster. I don't think they've made any major shakeups on that roster whatsoever. Mike Brown is the head coach. They were 48-34 last season. Let's talk about some storylines when it comes to Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they didn't need to make many changes. They're still pretty young and they're up and coming. I mean, I was going to say this might be one of the strongest divisions in all of the NBA. I mean, the West is strong itself. I mean, being a Suns fan, I don't like being in the Pacific right now. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but Suns are top tier. We'll get to that. And Sacramento's getting up there. I mean,
Well,
they play good ball.
I think the thing that they benefited from a lot last season is their main cogs didn't miss much time. Like, so De'Aaron Fox played, let me see how many games he played, but De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, their main 2 guys, they didn't have to withstand a prolonged injury for either of those 2 guys. De'Aaron Fox has had seasons in the past. He played 73 games last season. De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis played 79 games last season. So like their main best 2 players stayed healthy for the majority of the season, and you can't really say that about the other teams even in this in division by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had the Lakers with LeBron James and AD missing time. You had the Warriors with Steph Curry missing some time. And the Clippers, you had Kawhi Leonard and Paul George missed some time during the season. And then the Phoenix Suns, they make the big trade in the middle of the season, getting Kevin Durant. He misses some time right away. Like they basically had no injuries whatsoever, so they never had to really test like what this depth was on this roster because their starting lineup was intact for majority of the season. Kevin Huerter didn't miss much time. So like they never faced any adversity last season. Like what will it be when they get that first, because it's inevitable, right? They're eventually knock on wood, right? You never want to risk anything, but somebody's going to get hurt and eventually they're going to have to figure out if these other guys can play. Like the depth on this team just isn't quite there outside of Malik Monk. I like Chris Duarte is a trade that I really like that they made in the offseason, shelling out 2 second-round picks to get Chris Duarte. That's a good trade.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the depth will be tested at some point. No team in any, league, stays healthy all the time like they did last year. So, I mean, we'll see what they're made of. I mean, Fox will probably get,
an all-star bit. I think
hurt at some point. I mean, everybody does. Booker's gotten hurt. Curry's gotten hurt. LeBron's gotten hurt. All his key star players have missed some time at some point in their career, and it will test their depth, and it will allow them to adjust to that. Hopefully, it's all about the adjustments.
Yeah, and I think
making those key, trades and free agent moves.
I think the other storyline we're kind of watching here is the development of Keegan Murray. Sacramento caught a lot of flack when they took him over Jaden Ivey last season. Appeared to be kind of the right decision. Keegan Murray had a pretty solid rookie season, but you kind of need him to take another step forward, right? Like you can't, like we're kind of looking at his rookie numbers. You kind of need him to be, he's at 12 and 12, 4 rebounds and an assist. You like to see him get up those numbers to 15 points, maybe 8 rebounds a game, especially if he's going to be your starting power forward this season at 6'8". Like you kind of need him to continue to develop. This team's going to take another leap forward when it comes to Sacramento.
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned before, they are in one of the toughest divisions. So every team in the division has dealt with the adversity of injuries and, having to pull through going into the playoffs with it. So now is the time for Sacramento. They're going to have to deal with that in the next year or two and keep building on that. That's how you build, the full roster is through adversity like that. So Sacramento's going to deal with that here soon. I mean, their starting lineup is solid, but they're going to have to deal with, the depth, their second and third stringers.
I think another
So
thing that we're going to have to look for when it comes to Sacramento is this offense defense parameter. So they obviously were the most prolific offensive team in the NBA, but they were the fifth worst defensively. So like they're going to have to kind of really lock down on that side of the basketball to really kind of take the step forward that they need to. Let's talk about best and worst case scenario. What do you think the best case scenario is for the Sacramento Kings this season?
same as last year. Stay healthy. Win around 45 to 50 games. End up probably fifth or sixth seed or, less than that this year. I mean,
Yeah,
the West is solid again.
I think the West
So,
is really, really tough. I'd be shocked if they were the 3 seed next season. I think their best case scenario is I think they avoid the play in. I think they're a 5 or 6 seed in the Western Conference in a very loaded Western Conference. And then the worst case scenario, I think on the other side of the coin, I think, maybe the injury bug kind of gets Sacramento.
yeah.
They don't take those players that they expect to take the leap forward, don't really, and they end up being a play-in team. I just don't see them falling out of the play-in tournament. I think they're going to be good enough to be at least a play-in team no matter what.
Yeah, they'll fight for the play-in, worst case.
Yep. And then from Sacramento, I know the team that Matt James really wants to talk about. We got the Phoenix Suns, who were the number. Let's see. Hold on. They were the number 2 seed in this division. They were the. Let me see. Hold on. Let me get the win loss here. Hold on. When it was all said and done, they were the 4 seed in the Western Conference. Phoenix Suns. They beat the Los Angeles Clippers, and then they ended up getting bounced by the Denver Nuggets. Denver Nuggets. Looking at their roster, their starting lineup is pretty stout there. Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Josh Okogie, Kevin Durant, and Yusuf Nurkic. Their depth there. Grayson Allen, KSB Diop. Frank Vogel is now the head coach of this team after Monty Williams was fired after a disappointing season last year. They were 45 and 37. I think the major storyline when we talk about the Phoenix Suns is going to be health. And Kevin Durant is a fantastic basketball player, but he has had little injuries here and there that have caused him to miss time throughout his career, especially since the Achilles tear. Like you have to find a way to manage to keep those guys healthy because the regular season, as much as we hate, player rest and all this, the regular season for the Phoenix Suns, I think is irrelevant. It's all going to be about what they do in the playoffs.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the Suns, they went through the Sacramento, whatever, really quick. A few years back. They stayed healthy, got through it, but they have the players, to make it to the finals. Booker needs to stay healthy. Durant needs to stay healthy. I want to see what, honestly, our bench, our second string, our lineup could be one of the strongest in the league, in my mind. If you drop Okogie back there, we got Okogie, we got Grayson Allen, who's solid. We got, Bull. We'll see what he's up, made of now. We're giving Bull his last chance. So
I think Phoenix did a very good job of building around this roster because when you trade for Bradley Beal, you trade for Kevin Durant, Devin Booker's on a max deal. You kind of look at this roster and be like, how are we gonna fill out the rest of this roster? But I think their GM James Jones did a fantastic job of adding guys that have high upside. And I know DeAndre Ayton. I like the fact that they got Yusuf Nurkic in that trade. They got some pieces out of that deal that is going to bolster the depth. Grayson Allen is a good 3-point shooter. Can come off your bench. He could potentially even start over Josh Okogie potentially, depending on how things work out there. I love the signing of Aaron Gordon. Very little risk. Nazir Little is a good two-way player. Keon Johnson still has some upside. Udoka Azubuike is still a good basketball player at the center position. I love what Phoenix did with filling out the rest of this roster. Bradley Beal, first time he's going to play some meaningful basketball in probably about 5 years or so. So I wonder if what his play is going to be like. He's played on bad Wizards team for the last few years, and now that he's on a team with expectations, let's see how he ends up handling that situation. I love what Phoenix did this offseason. I think you got to go all in. Why just go half in? Go all in. And Bradley Beal, they got for a steal. I think that Bradley Beal deal was an absolute slam dunk for the Phoenix Suns. Not a lot of risks, don't have to give up that much. Yeah,
no, they're 100% in. We want to win a title right now. It's like now or never. They gave away all their draft picks basically to do it right now. I mean, with the Durant trade, getting Bradley Beal, Nurkic, everybody, right now is the time for Phoenix to win. I
And
mean,
yeah, I think
you know me, I've been saying that for the last few years, and if you would have known me, back in the Steve Nash days, I would have said the same thing. But right now, what they're doing is pretty much like, all right, it's now or never, you know.
Yeah, and I do sort of concerned about the injury history of Yusuf Nurkic, but when he's healthy, he's a fantastic basketball player. He's a good center, and I don't think he's that much of a downgrade over DeAndre Ayton, who was dysfunctional and didn't really want to be there in the first place. So you get a guy who wants to be there in Yusuf Nurkic. I love the go for this if you're going to go for it. Let's talk best and worst case scenario when it comes to the Phoenix Suns. What's the best case scenario? I think the best case is pretty obvious.
We're champions.
I think the best case scenario is they're hoisting the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Kevin Durant's
finally.
finals MVP. They finally get the monk off the schneid. They've gone to 2 finals in our lifetimes, lost them both, but I think this will be the season that they maybe get to the Larry O'Brien Trophy and get to finally hoist that jewelry and give a title to the desert.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about worst case scenario.
Many injuries. We're in the play-in game.
Yeah, I think that's probably as low as it'll go. I don't necessarily see the Phoenix Suns dropping out of playoff contention entirely, even if things go really south. I just don't see that happening. I think this is I think they even avoid the play-in team. I think this is one of the top 4 teams in the Western Conference, no matter what.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're a top 4 seed in the Western Conference at the worst case scenario for the Phoenix Suns.
Yep.
And then from your Phoenix Suns, we're going to switch gears over to the Los Angeles Clippers. Their starting lineup, we got Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Nicholas Batum, and Ivan Zubac. Their key reserves, you can see them right there on the screen there. Tyronn Lue is the head coach of this basketball team. They were 44-38 last season. They got bounced by the Phoenix Suns in 5 games last year when basically Paul George and Kawhi Leonard basically went down during that series. I think Clippers won game 1, right? And then it was a gentleman's sweep, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Clippers won game 1.
Yep.
I think one of the bigger storylines when it comes to the Clippers is all of this James Harden fracas. The fact that they're thinking about trading for him and they don't want to include Terrence Mann in the deal. My big question about that is I don't really understand why the Clippers want to trade for him in the first place. Like, they have Westbrook, and I just don't see Westbrook and Harden being a good fit in the backcourt together. I just don't understand why you would give up assets if you have Russell Westbrook on your team already. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, who at this point would want Harden? I mean, his antics. You know what he does. He does it with any team he goes to, which is why I'm happy Phoenix, doesn't want to pursue him at all.
Well, I mean, if they don't have an opportunity to pursue him, really, because they don't.
But if they did, I wouldn't want him anyways.
Well,
he's a great player when he wants to play.
Let's not pretend like James Harden wasn't good last season. Like, he had 2 40-point games in the playoffs, and he led the league in assists last year. Like he was pretty good last season, and I think his playoff stuff is way overblown. But I just don't see Westbrook and Harden being a good solid mix there. And I just never understood that trade conversation in the first place. They're also looking for a major step forward from Terrence Mann. He's one of the sticking points for the James Harden trade. If they were willing to trade Terrence Mann, James Harden would be a Clipper right now as we speak during this show. But they have been unwilling to move him. And so now he has to make the step forward. Also, they're relying a lot on health because this is a big time season for the Los Angeles Clippers. They got Steve Ballmer who's building that new arena, right? That's the arena is going to be going live, I think, next season or the season after. But Kawhi Leonard and Paul George both have opt-out clauses after this season. They can both leave in free agency if they wanted to and leave them for nothing. And you basically gave up a treasure trove of assets to bring these 2 guys in 5 years ago, including SGA, who's become one of the top 10 players in the NBA. For sure, top 5 point guard for sure. that's got to sting. If you lose those two guys and you basically replace them with nothing, this is a very important season for the Clippers. If they don't win the title this year, I think it's going to be a difficult sell to keep those two guys, both those guys there in Los Angeles. This is an extremely important season.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they have a team. They've had a team for years. I mean, again, it's about health. I mean, the Pacific Division is about health. So, I mean, if they can stay healthy, they can beat any team in this division in a 7-game.
I mean, they can beat, if they can stay healthy, they can beat any team in the NBA. I mean, we saw 2 years ago they made it to the Western Conference Finals, and Paul George by himself without Kawhi Leonard took them to six. What was it, the Phoenix Suns to 6
Phoenix,
games?
yeah, I was afraid too. So,
like if Paul George, if Kawhi Leonard doesn't get injured in the series before that,
that's a different series.
They go to the finals. No offense to the Phoenix Suns, but the Clippers go to the finals that year.
It was very possible, yeah.
And so, like the Clippers, if they could stay healthy, that's always the big is with this Clipper team. Like every season, it was like, oh, what if this didn't happen? Because Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have kind of taken turns missing time. And if you put a team construct together, this is the deepest team in the NBA. One of them, at least. You look at their roster; they're stacked. I mean, they got Robert Covington, like their backup center. Like he used to be a.
Well, you got Plumlee, you got
Norman Powell, who's going to be in the 6-man.
You got a lot of players off the bench.
Bones Highland is a good basketball player. Brandon Boston Jr. Still has some upside coming out of Kentucky. I think Kentucky. Don't quote me on that, actually. I don't remember where he went to college. But
yeah, I mean, they've done things right. They just need to stay healthy.
Yep. Let's talk about best and worst case scenario when it comes to the Los Angeles Clippers.
Finals. I say finals for them. I mean, if they stay healthy, they can make it.
Yeah, I think the best case scenario is if they do stay healthy, they're hosting the Larry O'Brien Trophy, very similar to what Phoenix Suns conversation. But that's a big if and a big asterisk. Let's talk about worst case scenario for the Clippers.
6 through 8.
Yeah, I think they're the worst.
They're above the play-in.
I think their worst case scenario is their two best players don't stay healthy this season, or they miss time sporadically throughout the season, and they're a play-in team. I think they could legitimately be a play-in team. They've been a play-in team 2 of the last 3 years. I think there's an opportunity that they could be a play-in team this year as well.
Yeah.
And to the Chris Paul now led Golden State Warriors. Their starting lineup right there: Chris Paul, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, and Draymond Green. Steve Kerr is obviously the head coach of this basketball team. They went 44-38 last season. They got bounced in 6 games by the Los Angeles Lakers in the second round of the playoffs last year. Their key reserves: Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Kevon Looney, who probably will start a lot of games for them. But the big notable change is they brought Chris Paul in. He doesn't seem to be willing to come off the bench for this team. He's probably going to start. Klay Thompson will probably play a lot of power forward this season, and Jordan Poole is no longer part of this team. He was included in the Chris Paul trade that sent him over to the Wizards. Now Draymond Green kind of gets what he wants after the punch that was heard around the world last season. Let's talk about some storylines when it comes to the Golden State Warriors.
And they keep their composure. I mean, they've been there before a few times, and can they stay healthy? I mean, we're going to say that for every single team here, but I don't think their bench is as strong as it used to be.
No, of course not. I mean, they've
gone
into a system where they've tried to kind of have this hybrid team, right? So they've gone to this model where they're trying to be like still competitive while developing players. So you got Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga were first round picks 2 years ago. Those guys have like basically fallen out of the rotation. Like in their playoff rotation last year, those guys didn't touch the floor, and like so they're trying to like grow young players, but yet they're still trying to win titles, and it just hasn't proven to work. I think they're going to be one of those teams that's in the market for a big time trade. Like you could look for like an OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam, as they have all of their assets. Yeah, their depth is certainly not there. I think when you look at the team that they have right now, I think this isn't the kind of like this isn't the bench that scares you the way that like when they Sean Livingston coming off their bench, they had David West coming off their bench, or they had Andre Iguodala coming off their bench. Like this isn't that unit. They have the Brazilian blur coming off their bench. Like, this is just not it. Unless Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga take major steps forward, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, Sarge he can be solid at times, but you never know.
He hasn't really been the same player since he tore his
No.
ACL in that playoff series 2 years ago. I don't even remember who he
Yeah,
played
in the
last year.
finals, yeah.
Yeah. I don't even remember who he played last year.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
I was like, he wasn't with Phoenix, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either. But I could not tell you where Dario Saric played professional basketball last year. I know he was in the NBA somewhere, but where, I could not tell you. Yeah, and then I think, the other storyline, I think, is the Chris Paul dynamic, right? Like, if he's insistent upon starting for this basketball team, what does that look like? Like, what are they going to do with everybody else? And like, if Chris Paul really not be able to shake his ego enough where he can't come off the bench for this team, I don't really get that. Like, he's a better fit on this roster coming off their bench. He just is.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's just being stubborn at this point. Be honest.
Like,
he knows he's CP3 and he's the point guard, quote unquote, but he's better off for the team itself off the bench. So it's one of those things where maybe he'll, be the actual true team player and be like, all right, yeah, I'm better off, coming out,
His initial press conferences when he first got traded to this team does not seem like that's going to be the case. He's going to starting. But, I mean, the Golden State Warriors could just start him and play him 5 minutes and then put him on the bench and then have him run with the second unit later in the game. But I think he still makes a lot more sense coming off your bench. There have been a lot of players in the history of the NBA who were stars or are stars who were unwilling or unable to accept that lesser role. Carmelo Anthony for a long time was basically blackballed from the NBA for a few seasons. Allen Iverson went through the same scenario where he basically refused to be a bench player. Yeah, your ego can get in your way, but he's a better fit on this roster coming off the bench. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as you said, get the second string in there a little earlier and let him play with them, and maybe he'll realize,
and I also
he can help them out, be a mentor for them.
Yeah, and meant to like having a Chris Paul to play with a Moses Moody, a Jonathan Kuminga, who could put them in effective places to be productive players. Because as of right now, those two guys, like they're banking on those guys being the second wave of Golden State basketball. They have not been that, even close to that. If you can get Chris Paul to put them in better positions to be successful, that's good for the basketball team. That's good for you as a player, and it's good for this roster.
Yeah, I mean, let him be a mentor. He needs to learn the fact that he's at that stage in his career. You had your last, life with the Phoenix Suns being a starter and trying to get that title. Now you need to go be a mentor and see if you can do it that way. Build the other players and, maybe become a, coach here soon or something. You're not going to be a full-time starter anymore.
Let's talk about best and worst case scenario for the Golden State Warriors. I still think the best case scenario for the Golden State Warriors is hosting the Larry O'Brien Trophy. I know that may sound absurd because I've had 3 teams so far in this division alone that I think can win a championship. But as long as you have Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Andrew Wiggins too, let's not be disrespectful. I think you have an opportunity to win a title. Like those 4 guys together are good enough. And whoever the 5th guy you want to be, whether it be Chris Paul or Kevon Looney, that is a good enough four players right there to compete with any team in the Western Conference. They could win the title. Best case scenario. And
yeah,
we have Steve Kerr as well. So.
Yeah, they've done it before. I mean, I'll say finals. I want to say Western Conference, but I'll give them the finals. I don't think they can beat. If Milwaukee gets there,
I think
Milwaukee can beat them.
I think they'll have a hard time no matter who comes out of the Eastern Conference. Because I think it's down to 2 teams in the East, right? You got the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks. I think everybody else is kind of a tier below that. If they match up again with the Boston Celtics, or if they have to go up against Giannis, I think they get smoked in that series.
Yeah, I mean it's a toss up from
Yeah.
below that. I mean
Uh,
Miami was lucky.
Yeah, and then worst case scenario, I think this is a play-in team.
Yeah,
Because you're relying a lot on like the humbleness of Chris Paul. You're also relying a lot on the development of Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga to really make a step forward. You're also hoping that their first-round pick, Brandon Podziemski, I don't know if I pronounced that right, but I took a shot at it. You're hoping that that guy ends up taking a step forward, like he ends up being worthy of a first-round pick. He ends up playing productive for you this season. Um, I think they're a playing team. I think is the worst case scenario for them. And given the fact that the Western Conference is as loaded as it is, I think that's just a testament of like how deep this conference is. Like the Golden State Warriors, their best and worst case scenario is that they can either win it all or a play-in team, which means they're like the 10 seed.
yeah, it's all or nothing. I
Yeah.
mean that's how they've been.
Yeah.
So I
And
mean
they're also relying a lot
injuries
on health, but
injuries will hit them, and they'll barely make it and get knocked out the first round. Yeah.
and then the final team,
Uh,
LeBron James in year 21. Obviously, last season got bounced in the Western Conference Finals by the Denver Nuggets. All five of these teams in this division were over 500. It's the only division of basketball that can say that. That is pretty damn impressive. Their head coach is Dalvin Ham. They were 43 and 39 last year. Their starting lineup: D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Jared Vanderbilt, and Anthony Davis. Their big additions this offseason, they signed Gabe Vincent from the Miami Heat. They signed Christian Wood from the Dallas Mavericks. They signed Jackson Hayes from the New Orleans Pelicans. They brought in Cam Reddish, probably his last chance to play in the National Basketball Association, at least at a high level. He was on the Portland Trailblazers last season, but he does have some upside. Let's talk about some storylines when it comes to the Los Angeles Lakers.
I mean, they're always a hit or miss. I mean, health wise, you never know. Their starting lineup, I'm they're in the bottom half of the Pacific. Honestly, I mean, they got LeBron, they got AD, you know, but D'Angelo Russell. But honestly, I think they're right in the middle to the bottom half of the Pacific.
Well, yeah, I think when you talk about their storylines, though, I think the really the biggest one is obviously going to be the health of their two best players. When LeBron James and Anthony Davis have stayed healthy for an extended stretch, they're as good a team as they have in the National Basketball Association. They just are, and I actually think that they did a very good job this offseason building up the rest of the fringes around this roster. I like Gabe Vincent; he was very good for Miami and their finals run. Christian Wood is kind of one of those players who's talented but never can seem to stick around in any one place for a long time. I heard he's very difficult to play with and coach. But he is talented. Jackson Hayes is a perfect five role man to a LeBron James. And if Cam Reddish can really, if he can like really find a way to find his footing, he's had brief moments here and there throughout his career where he's played pretty well. But it's been few and far between. And when they're healthy, this Laker team can beat any team in the NBA. They just can.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the Suns played them a few times. They had, injury problems against them. And when they were healthy, in that series, they, gave Phoenix fits.
Yeah, I mean
So,
that's that.
I
I mean
mean,
two years ago.
from personal experience, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they were up 2-1 before Anthony Davis got injured in that series.
Yeah, and
No
then
offense,
Suns won the next series.
you guys probably lose that series if Anthony Davis doesn't get hurt. Um, But yeah, I
Eh,
think the Lakers, they have some story. I mean, the other storyline, the other big kind of semi big storyline is the future of LeBron James, right? So he's in the final year of his contract with the Los Angeles Lakers. Bronny James is in college right now. He's going to be draft eligible next year. Like LeBron James, this could be his last season in LA. Like he's made it very, very clear that I want to play at least one season with my son. And whoever gets the opportunity to draft Bronny James is also probably going to end up with LeBron James on their roster.
yeah. Do you think it's going to be Cleveland?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Cleveland. I don't think Cleveland even has a first round pick next year, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can even trade him. Trade like I don't know if they can even make that happen unless they were. I mean, unless they were going to maybe if he falls into the second round, but I can't imagine that being a thing.
Yeah, no. Um, yeah, I mean, that's the thing with the Lakers. Who are they going to replace with LeBron next year?
I
I
mean, I don't.
mean,
I mean, they're
that's a big replacement right there. I mean, is AD going to stay? You might
well.
want to leave.
So Anthony Davis is already locked up to a long-term extension.
Yeah, but he
He
might
would
want
have
to
to
trade.
request a trade. I just don't see him being that kind of guy that does that. Outside of when he left New Orleans, but he didn't really request a trade in that situation. They just kind of felt the need there. Um, yeah, and I think they've done. I think they've done a very good job of building this team up. I think this is a team that's going to compete in the Western Conference. Um, let's talk about best and worst case scenario when it comes to the Los Angeles Lakers.
I say best case third or fifth seed and make the Western Conference Finals.
And I know I've said this for three other teams in this division alone, but I think the best case scenario for the Los Angeles Lakers is they're hosting the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Anytime that you have a roster that has two top 10 players in the world on it, you have an opportunity to win the title. You have LeBron James. He hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. He's still basically a he-man, really. And then you got Anthony Davis. When Anthony Davis is healthy, he's a top 10 player in the NBA as well. If those two guys can stay healthy for at least the playoffs, right? You have an opportunity to go all the
Yeah.
way. I mean, they were a play-in. I think they were a play-in team last year. They made it as the 6th seed, and they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals. And yes, they got swept by the Denver Nuggets, but those games were all fairly close. Like there were a couple games here and there that the ball bounces this way, ball bounces that way. They win that series, and then they end up in the finals. Yeah, they have an opportunity to hoist the Larry O'Brien Trophy. They're big time. Best case scenario.
The worst, same as every other team playing again
I actually think their
and do
worst
what
case
they
scenario.
did last year. I mean,
I think their worst case scenario is actually lower than that. I think their worst case scenario is potentially missing the playoffs entirely. We're not that far removed from the Los Angeles Lakers missing the play entirely. It's only 1 year ago, 2 years ago, right? And I think there is a possibility that this Laker team, they have injuries, that things don't go well, and they end up missing the playoffs entirely. And LeBron James is probably not on this team next year.
yeah, I mean that's their worst case scenario. LeBron leaves.
Because I think the thing is, like, so the West is so deep, right? Like you have some teams that you expect to take leap forwards. So you look at the West, like Denver, Memphis, Sacramento, Phoenix, Clippers, Golden State, Lakers. Those are all the teams that I can remember off the top of my head. Minnesota is going to be somewhere in the mix.
Minnesota's going to be there. Yeah.
New Orleans, if they can stay healthy. Oklahoma City Thunder,
Mhm.
everybody expects them to take another step forward. And then Dallas, right? If the Kyrie
Dallas,
Irving, Luka
yeah.
Doncic, if they can continue to play well together, they're going to be in the hunt for a playoff spot too. There's only 10 play-in spots, like playoff, quote unquote playoff spots, and one of those 11 teams that I just mentioned, right, is not going to be in that mix. One of them. Who is it going to be?
Yeah.
It could be the Lakers. It could be.
Yeah, there's so many teams out west. I mean, you can get 12 teams at 40 wins or above.
Yeah.
I mean, only 10 make it.
I mean, this could be like Western Conference from like 5 or 6 years ago, where they're just stupid top heavy, and they have a million teams that all have like 40 to 50 wins, and they're just it's just going to be a very difficult conference to get through this season. I could see a lot of teams making the playoffs. I could see a lot of teams actually winning the title as a member of the Western Conference. The Western Conference is very, very deep right now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's all about depth. It's all about, who do you have on your bench that can come in and take minutes to help your starters? I mean, whether injured or healthy, and fill that time. I mean, Cam Payne did that for Phoenix for Chris Paul in 2021.
Yep.
He had a hell of a run in 2021 throughout the playoffs. That's how Phoenix got through that.
But
Can you get that kind of player, to help your team out?
But yeah, thank you very much for checking us out here at the Prime Sports World. This has been our episode of the Crossover 23-24 Pacific Division Preview. Thank you very much for checking us out. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast as we go live basically every single day, bringing you guys the most up-to-date content. My name is David Huffman. Right there is my co-host, Mr. Matthew James, and our resident Phoenix Suns fan. Thank you very much for checking us out. And thank you very much for Mr. James for joining me here on the show.
Yes, sir.
Mr. James, what do we do here at the Prime, my friend?
We bring the heat.
That's right, baby. We'll be back here on Monday breaking down the National Football League as we got an exciting weekend of games going on. So keep an eye out for that content. We'll see you on Monday. Y'all have a good weekend. Stay safe out there.
All right.
Peace out, brother.